Come on the county, let's have a stroll. Come on the county, let's have some more. We're all behind you, so never fear. Come on the county, promotion's near. Run lads, shoot lads, give your heart and soul. Run lads, shoot lads, give us all a goal. Run lads, shoot lads, you can do it yet. Come on Newport County, oh, bang it in the net.
Hello and welcome to the 1912 Exiles podcast, the original, the biggest, the best Newport County podcast made by the fans for the fans. As ever, we are brought to you by the Terrace Cymru Podcast Network and in association with our friends at the Riverside Sports Bar, the home of live sport and great burgers in Newport. I'm Ed. I'm just doing a short intro for a bonus episode today. Obviously, we're all delighted about that fantastic away win at Barnet yesterday. Slightly unexpected away win, shall we say? And we will dive deep into that next weekend. We're going to do a full-length pod reviewing the Barnet win and hopefully results this week against Bromley at home on Tuesday night, which is going to be tricky. And yeah, that away game at Walsall next weekend. But this weekend, the pod crew are all having a weekend off. Ian has been watching bands. Jamie's been on a flight from Japan. Jack has been off going on theme parks like a big kid. I've been on visiting the in-laws duty. So yeah, we haven't had a chance to record a full normal pod. But instead, we have got a little bit of bonus content for you, recorded a few weeks back. I was away in the Basque Country with Ian and Rhys and various others on an overseas football trip to watch Real Sociedad, who of course have a link to county via John Aldridge. But whilst we were all kicking our heels in Bilbao airport waiting for the flight home, we had a quick chat over a café con leche about whether or not county would or could ever join the Cymru Leagues. A bit of a thought experiment, hopefully interesting, and we have got that for you now. So let's dip into the conversation, listen to that, and we will be back on normal pod duties in a week's time. Well, greetings from Bilbao. I'm sat in the departure lounge of Bilbao Airport with the man on the Basque beat, Ian Street, and the OG, Rhys Warren.
How you doing?
And we've got an hour and a half to kill before our flight, so where better to record some podcast gold? And Rhys, I think you've got a burning question you're going to throw to us, and we're going to riff on for a bit, and we can stick it out as an emergency podcast when the time comes for it.
Yeah, so this was something I was musing on the plane on the way over here. So one for the panel to consider is what would the implications be of county joining the Welsh league system? I think how good would the offer from the FAW have to be? I think Ian has burning opinions on this, so I'm going to throw it straight over to him.
I mean, there is no offer that could be made, I think, is my starting point. I'll start there. And when you were saying what are the implications, I think the implications would be pretty severe for the club. I think we would cease to be a professional club. So we would effectively be going back to Conference North, Conference South days, because I think that's a similar level to what the Cymru Prem is. And I think that we might as well just merge with Newport City and just be an amateur team bobbling around Welsh football and sliding into irrelevance, because who would care? I mean, I would never go and watch us in that, and I think there's maybe the younger fan base would, but I think most of the older generation would have nothing to do with it. The club was founded on Football with a Future, getting back in the Football League is where I started. Now obviously we're in a slippery slope this year, which is maybe where Rhys has posed the question, but I think for me there's a more existential hatred to the Welsh FA that I have, and maybe our generation has, because when we were struggling, the Welsh FA did everything they possibly could do to drive us out of business. And if you contrast that with how they've given the Welsh Government and the Welsh FA back in Wrexham, millions of pounds going in there, and they stood by and did nothing when we were struggling. And not only did they do nothing, they actively tried to drive us out of existence. And I personally will never ever forgive the Welsh FA for that. It's why they will never get anything from me ever, and they have never, to my knowledge, and learned people will correct me, they've never apologised for their behaviour at that time. So I know that the powers that be have changed at the top of that, obviously, since those days, since the dreaded Alan Evans was in charge when we were going through our crisis. They've never apologised for their behaviour. They singled us out as a club that they thought we can pick them off, and if we can do that, that's going to make everyone's lives better apart from ours, who they didn't care about. So they will never, ever, ever get anything from me other than a singular dislike and hatred until they come out and unreservedly apologise for their behaviour. So for me, no. There's nothing that could be offered.
Just on that FAW point, is that why you stopped going to Wales games?
I stopped going to Wales games primarily, there's a mixture of reasons. So once they moved back to playing it in a club ground, I refused to give Cardiff City any of my money, and they will be getting money from playing games at their stadium. So we are effectively subsidising them, and I will not have my money to do that. So that's why if we played back at the Millennium or at a neutral ground, or we went back to rotating, so everyone had a fair crack of the whip, maybe. But while it's just supporting one club, no.
So on the FAW, the Cymru Prem thing, I started off thinking, well, there's two things. There's the principled argument, which you've just espoused, and then there's the pragmatic argument. And I was trying to disaggregate the two a bit, because as someone who's a bit younger and who moved to South Wales early 2000s and therefore wasn't around at the time of county going bust, reforming and all of the exile years, I don't have that kind of principled stance against it. I have a few misgivings based on your experiences and those of others, but I, of my generation, don't have that principled argument. So for me, it's about what are the pragmatics. And actually, one of the the biggest pragmatic hurdle is that there is a principled argument that you and a lot of the older element of the fan base have. So actually, that for me does make it a non-starter. That if half your fan base go, well, we're not going to come on principle, and your gates drop by a third or a half overnight, then actually, like you say, you're down at crowds that can't sustain professional football. So for me, I think it almost fails on those terms anyway. But as a thought exercise, let's kind of park that. And also, as another element of that thought exercise that you have to park, is I don't think there could ever be a financial offer that made it sufficiently attractive that the current ownership or any ownership would want to do it. So when there was all the stuff a little while ago, the rumours that, the figure that kept being bandied around was, in theoretically the FAW might be willing to offer us 6 million. Well, I don't think that was ever on the table. That's, if you include add-ons and potential future revenue and all the rest of it, which I think is pie in the sky. So, but let's, again, for argument's sake, let's say there is 6 million, and let's say Hugh Jenkins decides, right, well, if I take that 6 million, that pays off all of my loans, I've got a few extra quid in the bank, and then I can sail off into the sunset. So this is all thought exercise, right? There isn't a principled objection from the fans. There is money on the table from the FAW that will make an ownership go, yes, let's do that. Where then do you find yourself? And I suppose this is where it gets interesting for me, because we have just been for 3 or 4 days in the Basque Country going to watch 2 games of football, in your case, Ian, Real Sociedad and Bilbao. So we are people who like going to interesting countries and places to go and watch games of football. So really what the question becomes, are you willing to trade a league season where you're going to Aberystwyth and Bala and Carmarthen for the possibility of once or twice a season maybe getting some European football and going off to, I don't know, Albania, Latvia, wherever it might happen to be for a great football weekend? And, I'm probably of the mindset where I would be interested in that, because suddenly you go, well, what an away weekend or week that could be to go and watch county play in Kazakhstan, Liechtenstein, that becomes a jolly. But is that sufficiently offset by the fact that the rest of the time you're going, right, cold Tuesday night, we're heading to Britain Ferry, so your Airbus UKs. So I struggle to see that having an appeal. And like I say, I think for me, the steps to get there are insurmountable or unrealistic. So I think it probably doesn't stack up. So I struggle to see it happening, but it's an interesting one.
I think the thing is that, you know, if we take aside all of the stuff that I outlined and we just use it as your thought exercise, which also I'm struggling to do, but but I think that it comes down to, yes, we like going to watch football, but there has to be sometimes an element of like, what football are we watching? And I haven't seen too much of the Cymru Prem. From what I have seen, it's not great football. There's you're talking about practical considerations. I'll give you one as someone who travels. Wales doesn't have the greatest public transport system. So how do we get to Bala on a Tuesday night from wherever you happen to live, unless you can get on the supporters bus? So again, from a practical point of view, getting around Wales is not that straightforward. So it makes it harder to actually go and watch the football. The football I would be going to see is basically bobbins. That does not, for me, compensate that occasionally. And there's no guarantee, because if we're playing at that level, even if Hugh's taking his money or whatever, we're probably still going to get outgunned by TNS or whatever. So, there's no guarantee we're going to be in Europe. But even if we are, the odd trip to Liechtenstein, for me, doesn't weigh up the inability to get around Wales and the poor quality of football that we would be watching. And where would we be watching it? Because it wouldn't be at Rodney Parade. So we're back at playing on a blinking park pitch somewhere on the outskirts of Newport while we still wait for the Sainsbury's site to be redeveloped. Obviously emotionally I'm against it, but even on the thought process, I can't see how there's anything in it for us.
Well, I can kind of see the appeal from an owner's point of view. Hugh could be there going, I'm going to get a payoff to join the league, and like you said, he might just sail off into the sunset at that point. But if he was to stay involved, he could be thinking, then we'd immediately be the biggest team in that league. We'd have the biggest gates. Even if we lost half our weekly attendance, we'd still be the biggest team by some margin. And then all of a sudden, we're the big fish in a small pond and on a smaller budget. So as someone who is currently subsidising the club he's put 3 million of his own money in the last 12 to 18 months, you could kind of see his head being turned going, well, I could run this club on a smaller budget. Instead, I could drop it from, 1.3 million are we about? I could drop that down to 800,000 and still be one of the best, still be in competition for the league title every year. We'd be the big dog, and we'd be winning loads of trophies. I'd be really popular. We'd have jaunts in Europe. It'd all be a jolly good time. But then all these kind of emotional and practical reasons that you've both outlined in reality make it an insurmountable challenge. But I can see why someone from a purely unemotional business standpoint would go, well, I think there's a deal to be done here, and that's kind of what initially brought the question into my mind. So yeah, don't know if anyone's got a riposte to that.
I guess my quick question for both of you, because I have said I would not go and watch us, and we played in that. Would you?
I don't know. I would probably give it a go. I would probably give it a go from a sceptical point of view, but being open to being won over, I suspect, is where I would stand on it. I suppose equally, there would be part of me that would think, well, if I'm going to watch Cymru League football, then there are Cymru League sides that are closer to where I live, and so, at that point, maybe you make the break, because it's like, well, are you supporting the same Newport County, or are you basically supporting a different entity? And if you're going to support a different entity, then, so that's also an interesting one. But I probably would give it a go.
I think it's a difficult one for me because, again, like you, I don't live in Newport. So do I want to drive an hour each way to watch Cymru football? Or would I, not that I'd ever adopt another team, but if I wanted to watch a football match, I could go and watch Chippenham Town, which is 15 minutes down the road. If I wanted to watch non-league football, I could do that fairly close. And like you say, it'd almost not be the same Newport County as we've supported for all these years. And I've been very fortunate in the time that I've started following, really, has been the glory years where we've gone kind of from the Conference South back up to League Two. And I know kind of it's not been a smooth ride, but like I haven't been through the kind of tough times that Ian witnessed. So for that reason, it's my club. I've watched its rise. It's been there throughout my adult life. So I couldn't just go and adopt Chippenham Town as my new team, but equally, I think if we move to the Cymru Leagues, we wouldn't be the same Newport County that I've been supporting for the last 20 years.
Yeah, and I think the other thing for me about, just as a thought exercise, is one of the reasons that we support the clubs that we do. Obviously, it's where we're from, or we have a connection, or whatever it may be. But there is something very democratic in, for want of a better word, in terms of a league system where you can potentially progress. And I'm the only one sat around this table who's seen us play in Division 3, right? I still think we can get there at some point. Maybe that's looking a long way off. I believe that the town could support a championship club, right? Now, it may be a dream, but those are the aspirations I have as a supporter. And again, if we go into the Cymru Prem, what's the ambition?
Finishing second to TNS every year.
Well, that. So you've got a whole season boiled down to what exactly? A couple of games, and so therefore, as Rhys is saying, it becomes a pointless exercise. I can just go and watch a few people kicking a ball around the park. I don't see what the draw would be, what the appeal would be to any of that.
The funny thing is, with that, is if the European games were what you were, is why you made that change to get those European games. Well, those qualifiers happen in August. So once they're done in August and you've been knocked out to Linfield, you've got nothing to play for the next 9 months until the next round of European qualifiers come round.
It's a good point. Can we finish on something completely different? Yeah. Which is, we won't do beefs, but do you have a shout out based on your experiences this last weekend of Basque football and Basque football culture that you would like to make? Because I thought that could be a nice little way to finish. So, Ian, I'm sure again we'll have thoughts. So, what's your shout out from Basque football culture at Sociedad and Bilbao?
Well, I guess my first shout out is to Ed for organising this trip. So that's good. My second shout out is to La Liga for faffing about with the kickoff time so much I was able to squeeze in both Sociedad and Athletic Bilbao, which was a bit of a bucket list thing for me. I think for me, I've watched quite a few games in Spain. This for me is possibly the most favourite place to watch football. The Basque, I like some of the Andalusia. Andalusia is great, but I think watching football here in the Basque Country is special. We often talk about clubs being part of their community. There's very few places I've been where you can. That's a visceral feeling here. The entire city that you're in is wrapped around the colours and the club. It's a manifestation of Basque culture, their ideas of family and community and support and looking after each other, and you can actually feel that outside, around and in the grounds in a way that I haven't been to any ground that does that. It is possibly the most inclusive football I've seen in terms of it's multi-generational. The Sociedad game was kicking off at 9 at night, finishing at 11, and we were surrounded by 5-year-olds on their, granddad's knee. So people brought up that this is part of their life. There's no drama. You don't need a big police presence. There's no aggro. There's no animosity from that perspective. But that doesn't mean for me there's still not a fabulous atmosphere in the ground. Both games I went to, the place was rocking. I mean, especially Bilbao. I mean, Sociedad was good, but Bilbao was absolutely rocking. And these are clubs that are not challenging for anything. But the manifestation of that, the living and breathing and walking down the Pozza, which is the sort of avenue that leads down to Athletics ground, and they built the ground, for those who don't know it, with a massive screen on the outside of the ground, and that screen lines up all the way down this street, which goes for about a mile or so, and there's just Pinchos bars all the way up this street, and everybody is just catching up with old friends. Families are there, teenage girls are going together to games. It's, my daughters who go to watch Arsenal women and stuff like that, they would love this in a way that I don't feel often comfortable taking them to games in Britain, because unfortunately, because of the behaviour of mostly men. So for me, I would happily come and watch this all the time. It's brilliant. So my shout out is to the manifestation of Basque culture that is lived and breathed through its football clubs.
Yeah, it's a tough act to follow, isn't it? I'd like to echo what Ian said. It's just interwoven into the entire community. If you walk around San Sebastian, everything is blue and white. The whole city is blue and white. The club is blue and white. And that, even the covers for the scaffolding as you go around the city are blue and white stripes. It's just, the club is so interconnected. And it was like Ian was saying, you had little kids practically falling asleep on their parents' laps watching the game at 11 o'clock. We were outside the ground for probably about 45 minutes to an hour, and there was just people everywhere. There was no aggro, there was no aggressive chanting, or there's no groups of fans getting at each other. They were opposing fans just passing through, and everyone was it was a lovely community atmosphere. But something I'd like to bring back and maybe see at the county is they have this fantastic thing with their scarves. So at the start of the game, they all lift their scarves up, a little like Anfield, but better. But also when they score, they all wave their scarves around as well, twirl them. And I think that's a thing common across Spain, to be fair. But I think that could almost be like a USP, that the county could start doing that. Like you could, and the black and amber is such a good colour as well to do that with. It would only take a small group of people to start waving their black and amber scarves when we score, and it would catch on. And I think that could be like a real visual thing that the club could adopt that would be really striking for us. So I'd love to see that at home.
There we are. You heard it here first, listeners. Make scarf twirling great again. The appeal from Rhys Warren. Well, there we are, gents. Let's sup up our Café con Leche and go and find our flight. Until next time, look after yourselves and each other. And as always, keep it county.
As we begun, the final chorus will now begin. So all together, let's all join in. Run, lads, shoot, lads, give your heart and soul. Run, lads, shoot, lads, give us all a go. Run, lads, shoot, lads, you can do it yet. Come on, Newport County, oh!